Hey everyone, Mike Mullis aka StingerNLG here for another Generation Gamers game review. Today we're bringing you another reboot of a classic game series, Tomb Raider, from the great minds at Crystal Dynamics, published by Square Enix. Now even though they call it a reboot, I more call it a prequel. You see, Tomb Raider was always about Lara Croft, a fearless woman driven by the passion of adventure and definitely not afraid to pull out her two guns and start firing away. She had the wealth of her family and therefore could afford gadgets and all kinds of things to help her on her adventures. But this story is a bit different. The reason I call it a prequel is because this is more about Lara Croft before she became Lara Croft. In this Tomb Raider game, Lara is a young woman just making her way out on some of her first adventures. The ship she's on, with her crew, crashes up on a mysterious island, and she must escape this island while being hunted by a cult. And you see a totally different Lara Croft than you've ever seen before. One who's scared, one who's unsure of what she should do, and one who's never pulled the trigger before to kill someone. As the story unfolds in this version of Tomb Raider, you see Lara Croft become the Lara Croft that she was in previous games. And it really adds a brand new element to the story of this game. A story that is really deep, and because of the way Lara is and how you see her trying to make her way through this island and learning how to just survive, you start to really emotionally invest yourself in her character much more than you ever have in previous games. So now that I've given you a little bit of backdrop on the Tomb Raider game itself, let me tell you a little bit about the version that we're talking about today. Now, Tomb Raider came out last March for the PC, the PlayStation 3, and the Xbox 360. At the end of January, they released the version we're going to talk about today, the definitive edition for the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. Now, if you've already played the game on the PS3 or the Xbox 360 or even on the PC, not much here is going to be different. The graphics are updated for next-gen consoles. There's a little bit of extra content. But as far as the game itself, both single-player and multiplayer, if you've played it on the previous-gen consoles, then you've pretty much played it on the Xbox One or PS4. If you haven't played the game before, alright, well stick with me and we're going to go through it. So, fans of the old Tomb Raider games that have been out as far back as even the Sega Dreamcast we'll see some familiar gameplay, but there's a little bit more to it than that. And it's kind of for better or for worse. A lot of the basis of Tomb Raider in the old days was not just gunplay and action, but a lot of puzzle solving and trying to get Lara to make her way around various obstacles by using the surrounding environment. You will find a lot of that in this game as well. Some of the places that you will encounter on the island will have some pretty sophisticated puzzles that you're going to have to solve to get through parts of the game. Added to that is a somewhat open world element as you make your way through the entire island, which is kind of a big place. There's a lot to explore on the island while you're running away from the bad guys or even engaging them. And so much of your time will be spent roaming around free areas trying to find some extra things like collectibles and GPS caches and documents of other survivors and adventurers that have been around. And along the way, finding these things, you sort of enhance your own story within the story. But make no mistake, there are certain missions that you have to do to get through to the next part of the story. So there is a bit of that linear piece to it as far as storyline goes, but you get to do a lot of roaming around and spending time looking at things and looking for things. One of the ways that they try to break that up is to not necessarily let you collect everything all at one time. For example, there are various parts of the island, as I said, and you can find a number of relics in those areas, and they could be hidden behind a house, hidden in a cave, things of that nature. Well, you could come across a door that you can't open yet because you don't have a certain tool or a certain device that will open that door. So you got to get through a bit more of the story to get that device to then go back and find that relic that you couldn't get to before. Now, because the island's a big place and there's a lot of ground to cover, there are camps along the way. If you get to these camps, you'll be able to fast travel from one part of the island to another. So once you get a certain distance ahead, you could go back to a place where you saw a relic you couldn't get to, and if you end up getting the right thing, then you can get that relic later on. So it doesn't just let you free roam the whole time and not deal with the story. Also, scattered within the gameplay, you'll find some of the regular things that Lara Croft is known for doing, jumping and ducking and moving around and shooting her guns and things of that nature. You'll also come across some QuickTime events, which are scattered throughout the game at various points. Starts right off the first level coming out of the gate with a couple of QuickTime events as you're trying to escape pretty much certain death. But the combat also it's a little different than older Tomb Raider games. Of course, you do have, like I said, your guns, but you also can salvage bow and arrows so that you can use that, and that comes with its own shooting mechanism. There is a little bit of melee in the game, but you don't get to that till later, and that's about all I'm going to say. And as you progress through the game, you can actually level up weaponry, and you can level up your character, Lara, with different skills. As you come across chests that you can open up to get salvage, which will allow you to buy parts for your weapons, or you can add survival skills to make things easier for you when you're finding relics or taking on a bad guy and maybe searching him for extra things. So there's that little bit of character progression in that Lara Croft never had in the older Tomb Raider games, where it was just kind of a straightforward puzzle and action type game. So beyond the single player game, there's also a multiplayer element, which is carried over from the regular version from the PS3 and 360. There are multiplayer matches for 2 teams. There are 3 types of games for multiplayer. There's a team deathmatch, a rescue, and it's called Cry for Help. They're okay, but nothing too great. I didn't find the multiplayer to be as much fun as the single player campaign. So the place where the definitive edition, steps away from its last generation brethren is in the graphics. So on both the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 4, the game runs at a gorgeous 1080p. And I do mean gorgeous. The game is downright beautiful. Crystal Dynamics has always known how to make a good-looking game. From Tomb Raider to some of their other endeavors, they just know how to put together a great-looking graphical game. And Tomb Raider is no different here. Now, there is a slight difference, I have to say, between the Xbox One and the PS4 version. The Xbox One version runs at pretty much 30 frames per second, while the PlayStation 4 version can hit up to 60 frames per second, thereabouts. So if you're wondering, is there a version that is better than the other if you have both consoles, definitely the PlayStation 4 version, frame rate wise, is the better version. Now they're both equal as far as the resolution goes, and there's not really any difference in the graphical assets or anything like that. Frame rate's definitely a difference. However, let me be clear. If you have an Xbox One and you get this game, you are going to be very, very happy with how it looks. Even at 30 frames per second, it's smooth, it's nice, and you spend a lot of time just looking around and going, wow, this is pretty. So, not to worry, guys. Also, the game makes use of various elements of each console. For example, on the PlayStation 4, you can use the touchpad to bring up your map and things of that nature. And with the Xbox One, you can use the Kinect to either use voice commands like show map, or to pick a weapon, you can say bow and you'll pick your bow, or say gun and you'll pick your handgun. And at various points while you're either climbing or hanging, the camera will allow you to lean back and forth in your seat to get a better look at things. And when you collect relics, you can actually reach out and grab the relic and move it around if you don't want to use the controller. Nothing earth-shaking or game-changing in any way, shape, or form, but nice little things if you want to get a little bit more of an immersive experience than just hitting buttons and moving the controller around. Also, with the PlayStation 4 gamepad, the light bar actually flickers different colors. So if you have a torch and your torch is on, your light bar will flicker red, orange, and white. It's kind of cool, but again, nothing earth-shattering. So the big question becomes, is it worth the cost? Now, on the PS4 and Xbox One, the game is $60, which is what it was back when it launched for the PS3 and Xbox 360. Right now, you can get the Xbox 360 and PS3 version of the game for much, much cheaper than that. And a couple weeks ago, which is when I got the game, it was on sale for both the PS4 and Xbox One. But is it worth the full price of the game? Well, it was definitely worth the $30 that I paid for it. $60 is a lot for this game if you've already played it. But if you haven't, it could still be worth getting at that price because you are still getting one incredible game. And if you don't have a PS3 or Xbox 360, well, you can't buy the older version of the game anyway. And let's be fair, you're getting a great game. And with the Definitive Edition, you're getting all the content that were packaged with the older versions, such as multiplayer map add-ons, some alternate costumes that Lara can put on during the game when you get to base camps, and things of that nature. So I'm going to give this game a solid 4 out of 5 stars. I'm really happy with what I got. Crystal Dynamics did a really good job. You know, it's not a totally different game than the last generation version, but the graphics are very, very nicely updated to a point that you can definitely tell a difference between the last gen and current gen, because now we're calling it current gen versions of the game. And the game is still a lot of fun. So if you haven't already bought the game, I can definitely recommend picking it up. If you've already played it on the PS3 or Xbox 360 or the PC, then double dipping may not be right for you unless the game goes back on sale again or you can find it a little cheaper online. So that's going to do it for me. This is Mike Mullis, aka StingerNLG. Thanks for hanging out with me tonight. Hope you enjoyed the review. Feel free to leave any comments that you like down below if you agree or disagree with anything I said in the review. Don't forget to check out our weekly podcasts. We usually put them up Sunday night. Follow us on Twitter at @gen_gamers. And check out our YouTube page at youtube.com/gengamers14. Till next time, game on.